Welcome to the Lynch with a Leader podcast takeaway edition, where Mike and Casey sit down and pull out some of the best leadership nuggets from the most recent podcast. Now, here's your host, Casey Lynch.
Welcome to Takeaways, where we get to look back on our past week's episode of Lynch with a Leader. I'm going to be your host for the afternoon, Casey Lynch, and we're here with the man of the hour, Mr. 200 episodes, Mike Linch. All right, you're 200 big ones in. First off, how's it feel?
200 episodes, man. Listen, it's crazy how fast it's gone. I'll tell you that. I feel like I'm just starting in a lot of ways. And in another way, I feel like I've been doing it forever. So it's sort of a weird feeling, to be honest with you.
What do you hope people have learned the most? Before we even talk about this past week's episode, in these 200, what do you hope people have learned the most and taken away?
I would say this, Casey. It really doesn't matter your field or what you do. You can lead with your faith out in front. And I think that's what I've learned. We've had local people who most people wouldn't even know, to names everybody knows. And they all have shown, if you are willing, you can allow God to use you right where he has you.
And you teased it last time when we met. You said that this 200th episode was a great encapsulation of what Lynch with a Leader is all about. And man, was it your interview with Jordan Raynor on his new book, The Sacredness of Secular Work. Man, what's one word you would use to describe your time with Jordan?
Jordan gets it. So Jordan really does, is almost like what Jordan understands and articulates is everything this podcast has been about. That my work's not sacred and your work's not sacred, working in ministry, quote unquote, vocationally. I believe all our work's sacred, whether you're a high school principal or a pro baseball scout. So I think the phrase "he gets it" is truly right, because Jordan breaks down those walls between sacred and secular that I think we have allowed to be built up through the years.
You know, I'm sure that it's clearly a struggle for a lot of people of seeing that their work matters and that they can glorify God in the mundane tasks that they do every single day. For somebody that is showing up to an office or showing up into a classroom, what would you say to encourage them to change their mindset from seeing their work as just something that they do to check off as a task, to seeing it as an opportunity to glorify the Lord?
And Casey, I think that the biggest thing I would tell them is what you do and who you are matters. You are in a place and in a space because that's exactly where God has designed for you to be. And he's going to have you meet people and come across people and influence people that will never darken the doors of a church to hear me speak, to hear you speak, or anybody else speak. But they met you in that real estate office. They met you in that coach's office. They met you in that classroom or that dorm room or wherever it's at. And you were put there for a bigger reason. And you are, the New Testament would say, you are an ambassador of his. And so, man, that is, if we can understand this, it will make our days more meaningful.
You and Jordan get into this a bit in the episode, but why do you think that Jordan in particular, writing this book, man, why do you think it's so important for the context we live in 2024? To just piggyback off the answer that you gave, why do you think that we need this book now in the world that we live in?
People are more down on the organized church than they've ever been. So I would say that would be number one. Number two, I believe, along with Jordan, one of the greatest movements of God in our next generation is going to happen when people least expect it. Everybody expects to see Jesus on Sunday. They do not expect to see him at 3:00 on a Monday, and how somebody deals with them in their office, whether it's just the excellence they work with, whether it's the passion they work with, whether it's that they stopped and said, "Hey man, are you doing okay? Can I pray for you?" I was just talking to somebody the other day, Casey. They had a loved one going in for surgery, and they said the doctor came in the room and said, "Listen, I'm a person of faith. If you don't mind, would you be okay if I prayed with your family?" Well, that's striking. Nobody expects that, but that's a person that gets, God gave me this talent and he gave me this ability to use for him.
I think one of the biggest takeaways that I had from the episode is you guys begin to talk about eternity. And Jordan has a whole portion of the book where he talks about eternal rewards and things like that. Why do you think it's important for believers to keep an eternal perspective? Because it is so easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just get focused on what's happening right now on our timeline of life. Why do you think it's important for believers to keep an eternal perspective? And how would you encourage them to do that?
Well, I would say number one, I think the Bible teaches us, it says in scripture that eternity is put in the heart of a man. When we remember eternity, it frames our day to day. So it just reminds me of what matters and what doesn't matter. You and I, before we went on, were talking about baseball. We both love baseball a ton, but in the grand scheme of life, is it that big a deal? Well, it is and it isn't, right? If I look at it in the span of eternity, I'm in the game of baseball. You're in the game of baseball for the relationships, because relationships are what last for eternity. And so I would tell all of us, even Daniel Harkavy talked about, Lord, teach us to number our days because they are few. We aren't going to be here forever. We are on this side of heaven for a season. But then when we remember eternity, we remember to focus in on what matters, who I put my investments into, where I put my treasure. Do I put it in a place here that I'm going to lose, or do I put my treasure into something that will gain dividends for years and years to come, which is investing in the lives of people and in eternal things? Man, I would challenge everybody. I just think it makes you make your life matter more when you get that and understand it.
I want to encourage you. If you haven't yet, you need to go online and you need to go ahead and order this book, because as great as the podcast is and getting to hear Jordan's insights are, the book could completely shift the way that you view your daily life and tasks. So be sure to go online. You can head to our show notes from the episode with Jordan Raynor. You can click on a link to go ahead, purchase that book, but it could be one that completely shifts your perspective. We're moving to episode 201 now. We're in the 200s. What do you have in store for us next Monday?
Yeah, we've got Alan Fadling back. We had Alan on before talking about the unhurried leader. Alan's going to be back talking about his new book, The Non-Anxious Life. It's interesting, same title as Dr. John Deloney's book. I notified Alan and he goes, "Yeah, we know. John Deloney's he's amazing, but man, this is such a hot topic, Mike, that this is where our publishers wanted to name the book Non-Anxious Life." And we spend our time talking about what are the pieces that we can put in place in our life within a very anxious world to build a non-anxious life. And man, it is, I told Alan this, Casey, when we got off the call. I said, here's what I appreciate. You're a non-anxious person. So as you're sharing this with me, you model what you're encouraging us to do. And it's an outstanding book. And our episode is a lot of fun.
As you guys know, anxiety is a hot topic in our world and one of the biggest struggles for people in 2024. So be sure that you don't miss next week's episode with Alan Fadling. Be sure to go in and like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast content, whether it be Spotify, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. Be sure that you are notified when this episode comes out, and we can't wait to see you on Monday and for you to hear Mike's conversation with Alan Fadling. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for joining us today and adding to your leadership toolbox. We will see you Monday when Mike sits down with another amazing leader who is making a mark in the space and place that God has put them. For more information about Linch with a Leader, please visit the website www.mikelinch.com.